Hello children, welcome to Learning Made Easy. Today we're gonna learn a non-detailed lesson, The Desert from An Alien Hand, the book prescribed by NCERT. Children, in this video I have not used any slides, but I have used the image of the exact lesson from the textbook and I have tried to give you a detailed explanation. Let's start with the lesson, children. Children, I hope you all would have learned about the four types of landscapes in geography. What are they? The desert, grassland, forest and tundra. Today we're gonna learn about the desert detailedly. Children, we all know that generally a desert is a place where there is no water and vegetation. Vegetation means plants. Likewise, we also know that there is a particular place which is green in the middle of a vast desert. What place it is? We're going to learn about that too in this lesson. And we also have learned that some deserts may be too hot or too cold. We're going to learn all these things detailedly in this lesson, children. Let's start reading. Those of us who live in regions covered with forests and surrounded by hills may find it difficult to imagine what a desert is really like. The popular belief is that it is an endless stretch of sand where no rain falls and therefore no vegetation grows. Children, people who live in areas covered with trees, forests, or in areas covered by hills, surrounded by hills, for such people it is really difficult to understand the real condition in a desert. And children, we all believe that a desert is a kind of endless stretch of sand. We believe that a desert is only made up of sand, and we also believe that there would not be any rainfall, and so there would not be any vegetation growth of plants. It is dry, hot, waterless and without shelter. But this is not entirely correct. For those who have studied it, the desert can be a beautiful place. It is the home of a variety of people, animals and plants that have learned to live under very hot and dry conditions. Children, what is the general belief? The general belief is that a desert is very hot and it is dry and it is waterless and there cannot be any shelter. Right? Shelter, a living place or a place where you can keep yourself safe. But this general belief is not correct entirely because there are many people who have studied about desert. Here studied means they have understood detailedly about deserts, and those people only know that a desert is also a beautiful place, like a place surrounded by sea, forest areas, how beautiful it would be. Likewise, a desert is also a beautiful place. But to understand the beauty of a desert, you have to study about it. Study about it means understand about it deeply. And such people who have already understood about deserts deeply, they know that in deserts also varieties of people live, likewise varieties of animals live, and varieties of plants also can be seen there. These people, animals and plants, they have learned to live under very hot and dry situations. That's why they are able to live in deserts. True, the ground is not always hidden by a cover of grass, plants and trees as it is in other climates. But whenever it rains, which is rare, desert flowers bloom, and the sight can be as rewarding as that of any tropical garden. Children, it is indeed true that the ground in a desert is not always hidden by a cover of grass. You can't see grass on the ground, so it won't be so much comfortable to walk, and you can't see plants and trees everywhere because the climate is very dry and hot there, it is true. But Whenever it rains, it is a new sight and a delightful sight in a desert. Actually, children, raining is very rare in a desert, but it doesn't mean that there won't be any rain at all. Even in a desert, you can see rain. But whenever it rains, you can see the desert flowers blooming, and the sight of the desert flowers, the look of the desert flowers would be so rewarding to our eyes. Rewarding, it would be so much attractive, it would please our eyes, and the appearance, the sight would be equal to a garden, a tropical garden, that too. Children, a tropical garden is made by using or showering lot amount of water and by giving proper irrigation system. So whenever it rains, even a desert would look like a tropical garden with so fresh with fresh life. A desert is not always a flat unchanging wasteland of dry sand. It may have mountains and hills. It may have an oasis, big or small. An oasis is like a green island in the middle of a desert where a spring or a well gives plants and trees a better chance to grow. Children, some of us have the misconception that a desert is always a flat, boring place, and we also consider a desert as a useless land, wasteland of dry sand. But the narrator here tells us that even a desert may have mountains and hills. Sometimes there would be an oasis in the middle of a desert. Children, you know what is an oasis? An oasis is like a green island in the middle of a desert. So, an oasis is a green place in the middle of a desert, and you can see a spring. Spring, a small water reservoir where you can get water. Or sometimes there would be a small well also in an oasis, and this spring or well would give water to the plants and trees in the desert there, and the plants also would grow well. So, a desert is not always a dry place. You can see oasis in the middle of a desert. Sometimes the oasis is big and sometimes the oasis may be very small. Children, a desert may be very hot like the Thar Desert. I hope you all would have learnt about Thar Desert, children. Thar Desert is in India and it is like a natural boundary between India and Pakistan, and it is also called as the Great Desert of India. So in Thar Desert, it is almost dry. The condition is almost dry throughout the year. Children, in India itself, we have another place which is quite opposite in condition to Thar, and that place is Ladakh. Children, we saw that Thar is dry throughout the year, but Ladakh is almost filled with rich vegetation. There are so many plants, and Ladakh is also filled with so many mountain ranges. You also have the upper Indus Valley in Ladakh. Ladakh is situated in Kashmir. So, children, the narrator of the lesson says that a desert may be hot like the Thar or cold like Ladakh. He means that it is not always true that a desert is only dry throughout the year. It's wrong. Some deserts may be very hot like Thar, and some deserts may have vegetation condition or cold condition like in Ladakh also. But children, people generalize the term desert. If they find a place without vegetation, without plants or water, they just call it as desert. Children, we already saw that deserts have rain very rarely. But we also saw that deserts also have vegetation, plants and animals living there. How is it possible? We're going to learn that in this part of the lesson, children. And in the synopsis, it is given that camel is a typical desert animal. We're going to learn about camels also. And we're going to learn about some smaller desert animals which have unusual means, unusual, totally abnormal ways of satisfying their water needs. Let's read the paragraph first, children. All living things need water in order to survive. The few plants and animals that live in deserts have developed the ability to require less water than most plants and animals. The camel, popularly known as the ship of the desert, can drink a lot of water at one time. Children, we all know that without water, no living things can survive, right? But there are some few plants and animals in desert who have developed the ability, the capacity to use very less amount of water comparing to the other animals in the world. And one such animal is the camel. Children, you know that people who are living in desert, they use camels to move from one place to another. That's why we call camels as the ships of the desert, right? These camels, they drink a lot of water at one time. Whenever they see water in oasis or in any other places, they would drink a lot at a time and they would store it for future use. That's how the camels are able to survive in very hot deserts also during times when they don't even get water. They would utilize the water which they have already stored up. Nearly 20 gallons of water is taken in by a camel at a time and it is stored in the bloodstream of a camel. Camels can do without water for days together. The reason is they sweat very little. We sweat because we must keep our body temperature constant. We sweat when it gets hot and this cools the body. Camels can stand high body temperature. They don't need to sweat and can therefore retain the water they drink for long periods of time. Children, the narrator says that a camel can live without water for many days. And there is a reason, children. Camels, they sweat very little. They are not like other animals in the other regions of the world. They are not like human beings. Camels sweat very little. And we human beings, we sweat because we have to keep our body temperature stable, constant. Whenever it gets hot, we sweat, and this sweating also cools our body. But camels, they can withstand very high temperature. They can survive in very high temperature in the desert. So they don't have to sweat to keep themselves cool. Therefore, camels can store up the water which they drink for a long periods of time. The smaller desert animals do not drink water. They burrow underground during the hot day and come out at night to eat. Some of them eat other animals and get the water they need from the moisture in the meat. Others eat plants and seeds and get the water they need from the plant juices. So children, did you notice it? The narrator says that smaller animals, they don't drink water at all. Then how do they survive? These animals, they burrow underground. They burrow underground, it means they create holes underground, and during the hot day they would survive inside the burrow. They would come out only at night, and night is the time where they hunt. They would eat at night. They would hunt some other animals, and from the meat of the other animals they would take the moisture. So this much of water gained by eating other animals is more than enough for desert animals. Children, I hope you know what are carnivorous animals. Animals which feed on other animals. We saw about carnivorous animals. Then what about herbivores? Animals would not eat other animals. A kind of animals would eat only plants. Herbivores would get the water they need by eating the plants present in the desert. And these plants would have some amount of water content inside them. By eating these plants, the herbivorous animals would get the plant juice. That water content is more than enough for them. Desert plants also adapt themselves to the life they lead. Cactus plants store water in their thick stems. Desert plants also adapt themselves to the life they lead. Cactus plants store water in their thick stems. Their roots lie close to the surface of the ground and quickly absorb the moisture from the light rains that occasionally fall. Desert plants can adapt themselves, can change themselves according to the condition in the desert. One such plant is cactus plant. A cactus stores water in its thick stems. A cactus would have very thick stems and water is stored there. Children, cactus plants do not have deep fixed roots. Their roots are very much close to the surface of the ground. So, whenever it rains, immediately cactus plants collect the rainwater and they store the water in their thick stems and they would be using it for future. Children, we already saw that raining would be happening occasionally, very rarely. But even during those rare times, cactus plants can collect all the water and store. The major feature of all deserts is, of course, dryness and variation of temperature. In humid climates, the moisture in the air acts like a blanket and protects the earth's surface from the hot rays of the sun. The absence of this blanket in desert lands causes the desert to heat up rapidly during the day and to cool off rapidly at night. Children, the very important quality of all the desert is dryness. All the deserts have dryness and variation of temperature. What is variations of temperature? In the morning it would be too hot and during night it would be too cold. Why does it happen? In humid climates, the moisture in the air acts like a blanket. In humid climates like in our region, where there is no dryness, there would be some moisture in the air and it is like a cover and it protects the ground surface from hot rays of the sun. So we don't feel it so hot during the daytime. However, this humidity, this moisture is not present in the desert regions. That's why the hot rays reach the ground so easily and it is so dry and hot in the deserts. The absence of this blanket in desert lands causes the desert to heat up quickly during the day. And at the same time, at night, it cools off too quickly. Deserts are an important part of nature's great plan. They are there like the dense forests and the deep oceans. Just because they are hot and dry, one should not look upon them as useless parts of the earth. Children, we all believe that areas covered with forests or oceans are beautiful, and some of us will believe that deserts are useless and they are not beautiful to look at. But it is wrong. Deserts are also part of nature. Even they look beautiful, children. Deserts are hot and dry. It doesn't mean that they are useless. We saw that there are many animals and plants living in deserts, right? So, desert is also a shelter for many animals and plants. So, we can never call deserts as useless. Even deserts are beautiful for people who have studied the deserts. Studied, I mean, understood deeply about the deserts. With this, we have come to the end of the session, children. This lesson is very lucid in style and easy to understand. So, children, read through the lesson to understand better and try to practice reading with the lesson passages. Thank you, children.